Hello, it's your buddy Dean Homeuni, and I'm just really pumped to be back with you all. I just really enjoy going over these type of programs and talking to people about my experiences and what works and doesn't work. Now, on this next tutorial, we're going to look at multiple issues, and one is flickering in the film, which is where your light is flickering almost like a light bulb going on and off. And the next issue is banding in the water, where your watercolors look different, almost like a hurricane moving forward and having rain bands to it. So I think to start off, the first thing we should do is see a wonderful video tutorial about 5 minutes long by Boris. And later on in some of the chapters that we have additional resources and training materials that we take you through to various websites where you can get additional training on a lot of these issues. And Boris has got some great training on some of their products, even though none of them are really for the underwater environment. And that's why that we created the series, was to take the tools they had, look at the tutorials, and then figure out how to apply those tools to the underwater environment. So I'm going to stop the film here just shortly for a second, and we're going to go in and watch this short tutorial from Boris FX, which is about their Flickr Fixer tool. So I'll see you all in a couple minutes.
Go ahead and play this clip, and we're going to see a little problem happen. And if you work with DSLR cameras, or you had interesting lighting problems, you're seeing the flicker all over that shot. And that's, you know, as an editor what this means. You're not going to use the shot. It would be nice if we had something we could fix that. And this is one of the banes of using DSLR cameras, but cameras in general. DSLRs, when we because they have slower shutter speeds, we can get this when you're dealing with fluorescent rooms and strange lighting. You can really get this flicker. And while this won't solve every problem on the planet, well, we've got a whole category here called image restoration. There's a really great, for example, noise reduction. I did that in one of the earlier Boris webinars. There's a pixel fixer. If you've got a dead pixel in your camera, we've seen the upres before. The one I'm going to pick today is the Flickr Fixer. And I'm just going to drag and drop it onto this clip. And we're going to open it up and take a look at what the Flickr Fixer can do for us. The Flickr Fixer essentially is doing a level of an analysis. And the way its analysis works, got to be on the right effect, Jeff. There we go. The way its analysis works is either frame-based or temporal-based. And I'm just going to explain the value of both of them. The frame-based analysis, it essentially is looking so many frames around where we are. It's looking at 5 frames around. And what it's doing from that is it's then smoothing. It's going to analyze this, and then this has to, of course, occur with a render. When you do this, what it then does for you is it says, okay, I see this is brighter and this is darker, and it tries to smooth that, to remove the flicker. It does a pretty good job. It does its best job when it's on the whole frame, like this shot here. When you have something that's a little bit more complex, that where you only have part of a frame, which happens kind of frequently, you'll notice that there's some temporal smoothing. Now the temporal smoothing looks at every single pixel. The only negative with temporal smoothing is that, of course, it's going to take a little longer to render, and it's, of course, going to soften the picture a little bit because it's doing a lot of extra work. I would probably recommend to you to use the YCC, because that Y is the luminance part of the color signal rather than RGB. But if you're having flickering shot and you need to use it, you should probably experiment with all 3, although I would use the bottom 2 where only part of my screen is flickering. Since it's processing individual pixels, it can say part of the frame is flickering and part of the frame isn't. Now, I'm going to leave this on frame analysis. It just turned out with this shot, it worked out of the box. It's a little hard to see, but it gives me a chance to show another neat part of the BCC plugins, and it's the compare feature. Again, a lot of the effects have this. We go to compare mode, and instead of off, I'm going to say side by side, where we can see both parts. We can see 2 parts of clip of before and after. And we also can see a compare. And the compare will give us a fine line down the center. Now I'm going to try playing it to see if we have this, to see if we can see that difference. It may just take too much time for us to see on the left side that there's a flicker and on the right side there's not. But it's a great use of this compare. I've actually rendered this with the compare on. And I'm just going to play back that section right here. It's the shot I have after. And when I play this back, you'll see half the screen flickers, the left side, where the right side is nice and rock solid. And that's what that Flickr Fix is doing. You can see on the left side it is just absolutely flickering all over the place. And as I said, an unusable shot. So this is a nice thing with all of our attempts to become more filmic with our use of DSLR cameras and the like. I find that this is just a fantastic addition to the BCC effects. It just absolutely solves that problem, making it possible for me to get to use more of my footage.
The next piece of film that we're going to see is a beautiful clip. We'd worked on it before, of swimming along the reef loaded with tons of fish in the Grand Cayman Islands. And this piece of film has got a lot of problems that we're going to wind up discussing, including flickering in the light coming down and flickering almost like lightning strikes. And then secondly, that we're going to explore the issue and discuss banding. And the best way to describe banding is changes in the watercolor at different levels that we will get a real good look at that and you'll understand what banding is. So for this particular tutorial, go to film, and I've already set up what I have as lesson 5. So if you don't have a lesson 5 bin, go ahead and create a bin by bringing it to film and then clicking on the bin button, and that'll create the bin. We've done that multiple times. And then after you've created the bin, as part of the lesson plans, we have what's called lesson set 5. Highlight both of those pieces of film, drag them into your asset bin, and then move them up to lesson 5. And of course, I'm going to wind up deleting both of these because I already have them in my lesson 5 bin already. And then after you've moved those two pieces of film, come down to sequence and create a sequence called lesson 5. And if you don't remember how to do that, you go File, New, Sequence, and you type in, make sure you pick ABC HD 1080i, and then you pick this 1080i 3060i as the relevant format and type in lesson 5. And after you're done with that, just double click on lesson 5 and it's going to bring it up, as we've been using these tools throughout the lessons that we've been doing. So let's go ahead and take a look at this very problematic clip, the one that we stabilized. And under the stabilization routine, remember we had a problem with some leakage, so we rendered a separate left and right eye, and this lesson 3 left eye is just that rendered file. So let's go ahead and wind up taking a look at this, and I'm going to discuss some of the issues with this clip as reviewing it, and then we're going to discuss some of the tools that we're going to use to try to save this clip, because there's so many great fish in it. I want to save it, otherwise I would just throw it in the trash bin and just say it's unusable. So I'm going to go ahead and wind up hitting the play button, and we'll discuss these issues. So the first thing is, what you're going to notice is the water is all over the place. We're getting kind of like a flicker, as we saw in the tutorial from Boris. And we also have different watercolors going on all over the place. Wow, did you just see that? Look at the change of that color right here in the water. Let's go and take a look at it. See that right there? Bam, it changed. We don't have a consistent watercolor. So we'll go along. We're looking at the clip. Once again, we have water all over the place. Once again, the water just changed color. We have lighting issues, differential in the color of the water. And then we have banding. And banding, I'm going to go back for a second, is where I'm going to crawl. And you see these bands? It's almost like the bands of a hurricane when you watch it on TV. There's like banding going on here. See all this outline, all these different shapes regarding the watercolor, and then we come down, it's different. Well, that's called banding. And banding is a really big problem in this clip. Once again, we have banding again. You see this kind of outline going right along here. These are all problems that we have with this particular clip. It's extremely challenging, and normally I would take a clip like this and just throw it out. I wouldn't even try to fix it. But for our purposes, I wanted to pick something that was different colors, once again, banding in here. But for our purposes, I wanted to pick an unsavable clip. And if there's somehow that we can save a portion of this clip, we've done a really good job. So the first thing we're going to do is that we know we have flickering issues going on, and they're big. So what you're going to do is under your effects, we are going to come into Flickr Fixer, Boris Continuum Complete, Flickr Fixer. And within here itself, let's go Flickr. I can do a search for that particular effect. And we are going to look for Bcc Image Restoration. Once again, the Flickr Fixer is under that. We're going to drag it into our plane. I already have it in here, so I'm just going to delete this second one out. So just bring that Flickr Fixer in and bring it on top of the clip, and then I'm going to expand the controls. What happened was he talked about the temporal. I'm going to go ahead and use the Temporal Smooth YCC, and I'm just ramping these controls up the whole way because it is just so bad in this clip. I don't think that I can wind up saving it, but I'm going to try it. And you're going to step right along with me on this tutorial to see whether or not that we're going to be able to save this clip. I'm going to put the smoothness to 74 because we're so far all over the place. I'm just ramping this thing up to the max to try to fix this flickering. And what happens is when you ramp these controls up, it is going to take up all of your CPU power. So at that point now, I've turned around and already rendered this file out because it took quite a long time to render. So here's our rendered file, which is sitting in here, and I'm going to go ahead and play it at full. And all of a sudden, we still have flicker, but it's not as bad. So the Flickr Fixer was able to fix a portion of this clip, but to tell you the truth, it's still not usable. And the reason is I have banding going on in the water. You see all this banding which is along here? I still am not going to be able to use this clip. So I'm almost, once again, I have banding all over through here. So I'm almost ready to wind up throwing my hands up in the air. I love this scene. The fish are great. It has a great 3D effect when I play it in 3D. Once again, banding, but I don't think I'm going to be able to save this clip. So what do? Well, within Sapphire, they have a control called Deband. So let's go to our video effects and let's just go Deband, that we're able to do a search. And here's the Sapphire Deband control. Just drag that into your effects plane as an example, which I already have it loaded. So I'm just going to wind up cutting it. And then I also want you to bring in the Bcc Brightness Control. So under here that we'll go to video effects, and we're going to go to Bcc Color and Tone. And then under here that we have a control called Brightness Contrast, and also drag that in. Of course, I already have mine in there, so I'm going to turn around and just delete this one out. And we're going to use these two controls in tandem to try to fix this problem. So let's do the down arrow to the band point in time, and let's also do the down arrow to the brightness control. Now, I'm going to wind up turning my banding control on, And what happens is you come here and there's a show item, which is right here. And if you click on the down arrow and change it from result is what is appearing on the screen, but you change it to edges, it brings up this screen to try to deband the water, where this is showing you whatever is going to wind up being affected. So within here now that we have these particular controls that we're rolling it, whatever is in black is going to get affected, and whatever is not in black, i.e. in white, is not going to get affected. So it's the opposite of Bohr's continuum complete. In Bohr's continuum complete, what's black doesn't get affected and what's white gets affected. But in Sapphire, in GenArt Sapphire, what's in black gets affected and what's in white does not get affected. So under here now that we're using this tool, which I'm going to turn on, then I'm going to have to go from edges to my result to see what's going to happen. And this actually winds up doing some corrections to the film that we're going to put it on a half, but let's go ahead and see if it plays. Now all of a sudden it's smoother. Between the Flickr Fixer and using this Deband tool, it's getting rid of a lot of the banding which is in the water. But we still have some. And it's doing it by a combination of putting an additional blur to the film and looking at the pixels surrounding it regarding how is it going to wind up fixing it. So what I do is I kind of ramp up all of these controls which are in here, and I have them set very high, and they're going to create a small blur, but I'm trying to save this clip no matter what I want. So clearly we've come a long ways, but we still kind of have banding going on, but it's smoother. So it comes across the screen as kind of a wave. So we're still looking at this piece of film and we're going, well, that's not good enough. What are we going to do? We've come a long ways and we want to save it because there's so many fish in this film. So what do? And that's where I bring in this Bcc Brightness Contrast Control. And under this control, what I'm going to do is I'm going to darken this water a little. And what that does is that, unfortunately, is one of the only few ways you can really do this. I'm going to wind up adjusting my contrast to about 5 or 6. And I'm going to wind up adjusting the brightness down. But this is where, once again, BCC and their mats come into play. So what I've turned around and done is I picked the blue channel. I came to my pixel chooser and I want to choose my chosen pixel. And this is going to take, actually I'm going to turn the control on. And here are my pixels. And we all know at this point in time how we wind up creating a threshold map. So I'm going to go to threshold and I can wind up adjusting this mat. So once again, I want to get it where the water is going to be affected and the coral is not. Now, what happens on here, which I probably did not do enough mats, you can see that we have leakage going on all over the place. And I'm going to go along the line. Of course, I have leakage, and I could create additional mats to wind up cleaning up some of that leakage going on. That seems to be a relative scene change at that point. And I can wind up splicing this film to actually create a new mat. I'll come in, go back to my pointer tool, look at my map, and see if I have a clean delineation between the water and the coral. So under here that we don't really have a clean delineation. This is somewhat of a tougher scene, but I can wind up darkening it a little bit as we've done on the colorization tools that we saw. So why don't we turn around and go back and return the pixel choosers back to on so we can see what the results are. And I do want to bring up one point. When we're going through and you're cutting all these mats, especially in this scene, if I was doing it for a movie, I may turn around and create 20 mats. And if you don't come back in and change it from view chosen pixels to on, when you go to render this movie, if you have it on view chosen pixels, that's what it's going to render. And I've done it innumerable times that I'm watching a run on our big screen TV to see what the results are, and all of a sudden this comes up, and I just wind up shaking my head. So after I got burned on that a couple times, because it takes about a couple hours to do a render, and then another hour to render it in Cyberlink to make the Blu-ray, I now go through and check every single clip on my timeline before I do a render on a movie. But in here, that we'll go ahead and switch it to on, and let's take a look at what our results are, where I've lowered the brightness to a -12, and I've done the contrast to 2. And I believe I've done it on both of these clips. And we're going to see that from where we started out at to where we ended up now, the results are markedly better to at least allow us to save a portion of this clip. Now, we started in 1 minute 20 seconds and we ended at 2:24. So we're getting approximately 1 minute and 4 seconds of film. And we've talked about using clips. So if in here I could save 20 seconds of this clip, which means I have to eliminate 44 seconds, 20 seconds is better than nothing, especially on a scene that has a lot of fish in it. So let's go ahead and play it. And we're going to see that a lot of the flicker is gone. It's a lot smoother. Most of the banding is no longer present. There's a slight amount of banding, but clearly it's much better than it was. We still have some colorization going on in the water, but once again, because that we're going to make a determination and cut out approximately 44 seconds, we're going to look at scenes that are relatively consistent and try to save some of this film because it has a really good 3D effect and a lot of fish in it. So I think that we kind of succeeded in our goal. We weren't able to get the clip perfect and be able to save the whole thing, but we were able to save a part of the clip. And now it comes up to your artistic talent for you to come and make a determination about what part of the watercolor looks the best for you and where's the most consistency to be able to use as much of this clip as you can. And I think that you can see that as watching this clip, we did get some remarkable results, even though we do have parts of it that wind up blasting up and making some color like right now, and those part of the clips that we would probably cut out. So that is our lesson on Flickr that we saw, the Boris FX tutorial on Flickr. Remember that tool is available for your shots in the water and also above ground. And we looked at the combination between the Sapphire Deband tool along with the Bcc Brightness Contrast to lower the brightness of this clip and make the water a little darker to try to resolve these banding issues. And those two tools are going to have to work in tandem. So with that being said, we've just completed another tutorial, and I'll see you on the next one.